Hey everybody, I hope you guys are healthy and safe. So I've been traveling for the past 5 weeks now. If you follow my channel's videos or social media, you will have seen that I've been in a different city every 5 or 6 days. So I've been on the road mainly because there've been a series of work trips, and I've been doing all my work on this machine. This is the 2023 16-inch MacBook Pro with Apple's M2 Max Silicon. If you follow Apple products or computers in general, you will have heard of the Apple Silicon, which Apple started doing 2 years ago. Instead of using Intel's processor, Apple decided to make its own silicon, which is similar to smartphone chips, like the chips that we see in an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy device. These are built on ARM's architecture. They are much smaller in size, and also all the necessary computing parts are on one chip. That's why it's called an SoC, systems on a chip. This differs from Intel's processor, which is built on a more complicated architecture. So where Apple stunned the industry was that because for about like 15 years, we're talking about mid 2000s to like the late 2010s, the conventional wisdom in the computing industry was that smartphone chips using ARM architecture, the conventional wisdom in the computing industry was that smaller ARM-based silicon was only good for smartphones and tablets, meaning devices that you need to use immediately, but at the same time, you're not doing a lot of heavy work on it. To do heavy work on a real computer, you would still need Intel's processor, and that is why Intel's been so dominant in the PC space. But then Apple proved everybody wrong by building a small chip using ARM silicon that was just as powerful, if not more powerful, than Intel's best processor, but also a hell lot more efficient. And it is that efficiency that has set Apple silicon apart from any other chip in a computer right now. So in the past 5 weeks, I've made what, like 6 or 7 videos for my YouTube channel, all on this machine, and I never heard the fan kick in once. Okay, I'm running the Cinebench benchmark right now. It's a pretty graphically intensive test. I have my Bluetooth mic here. I'm gonna put it next to the laptop. You won't hear anything because the fan is not on. And it is running completely on battery power right now. It's not plugged in. But the fan is not on. The laptop, it's only a little bit warm. It's not hot. I'm not just talking about when I'm editing the videos, when I'm scrubbing through the timeline, but also when I'm exporting the video, rendering the video. It renders in complete silence without the fan turning on once. And the rendering times on Final Cut Pro is absolutely jaw-droppingly fast. If you're rendering any videos under 2-3 minutes, it basically will finish exporting in like 10 seconds. If you're exporting a longer videos, like one of my usual 10-minute YouTube videos, it still only takes about 2 to 3 minutes without the fan ever kicking on once. And I'm doing all this on battery power too. And that's the second biggest thing about Apple Silicon is that it is way more efficient on battery power than any other Windows machine. So for this trip, I also brought with me the Asus ZenBook 17 Full Duo. The name is really long, but this thing runs on the 12th gen Intel i7 processor, so it's no slouch. But whenever I use this machine, I can see a clear difference when it's plugged in versus when it's not plugged in. And it's not just this machine. With any other Windows laptop, you see a significant performance drop whenever you're running on battery power compared to when it's plugged in. And this thing, the fan turns on so fast. Even, I'm not, and this thing, the fan turns on so fast. I'm not even talking about editing videos. Like, even when I have more than 6 or 7 Chrome tabs open, the fan will kick in. With this M2 Max MacBook Pro, I never heard the fan. I'm not exaggerating. I ran benchmark on this thing. I ran 8K video rendering tests, and I never heard the fan once. There's nothing I can do to get the fan to kick in. And the battery efficiency, as I mentioned, it's epic. So if I'm using just this machine to write words, like if I'm just writing articles for XDA, this thing can last me like 13, 14 hours on a single charge. But then if I'm doing video editing, which is usually very battery consuming, on a Windows machine, same thing. If you're using a laptop, you will not be able to edit for more than 2 hours before the machine dies. On this machine, I have edited for like 3 to 4 hours in one sitting, and the battery will only have dropped about 70%. So that means if I really want to push it, I can edit another hour on top. That is just absolutely uncanny and blows my mind. I hate that what I'm about to say makes me sound a little bit pretentious, like a little bit of a snob, but I think it's really worth mentioning for context of this video as I'm gushing about this machine. I am not an Apple fanboy. I'm not loyal to any one brand. If you follow my work closely, you will know that I actually prefer to use an Android phone most of the year. And I think that differs from a lot of particularly American reviewers for mainstream publications. Like if you watch, the Wall Street Journal's Joanna Stern or PC Magazine's reviewers or CNET or Wired, you can tell they're all actually Apple users full time. Even when they're reviewing like a OnePlus phone, they're wearing an Apple Watch on their wrist. And that's kind of understandable. Living in the US, switching phones could be a hassle. And for a lot of them, they're like stuck on iMessage, so they have to use an iPhone. But I'm not one of those people, so basically what I'm trying to say is I use whatever product is the best. So for a phone, I would use an Android flagship because I think Android flagships generally have better camera performance than the best iPhone. And for a work machine, I've been using a 16-inch MacBook Pro for the past several years. Not because, I'm immersed in the Apple ecosystem, but because it is the best machine. Particularly since Apple switched to its own silicon, the M1 Max and the M2 Max. This is the best combination of power and efficiency I've seen in a portable work machine. And I've tried to use other machines. You guys know that I'm a big fan of foldables and different form factors, right? So I really, really wanted to love the Asus ZenBook 17 Fold. I tried using this at work, but it's just slower than the MacBook Pro. Like I'm talking about just like loading several websites. It takes a beat longer here than on the MacBook Pro. And battery life on this thing sucks. Like I take this out to a coffee shop. After 3-4 hours, the thing is down to like 15%. On this thing, I don't have to worry about charging it. I just bring it out, work 6 hours, come back. I don't even need to plug it in. Next day, I can bring it out again, and I know that it's still good to go for at least 1 or 2 more work days. Okay, let's take a look at the overall hardware. There's not much new here. Other than the silicon, everything's almost exactly the same as the 2021 M1 Max MacBook Pro. And that's not a bad thing because that machine was awesome. So this is a 16.2-inch micro LED display with a resolution of 3456 by 2234. It is a great looking panel. Now micro LED is a relatively new display technology that kind of aims to find the middle ground between an LCD panel and an OLED display. Now OLED displays are generally the best type of screens because they can display truly deep blacks, but OLED displays, generally speaking, aren't used for laptops because they have a shorter lifespan and they can have burn-in. So micro LED is kind of like the happy balance, and I think it's fine. The blacks are a little bit deeper here than on the LCD panel, but obviously not as deep as an OLED display, but it's still more than good enough. The speakers on this laptop is, in my opinion, the best in the business. It pumps out really lively, full sound.
To take this roster and the opportunity for granted, telling ESPN, quote,
you have a gigantic trackpad and a very spacious keyboard. I'm a very fast typer. I type like about 107 words per minute, and I can reach my peak speed on this keyboard without any issues. At the upper right corner of the keyboard, it's a Touch ID fingerprint scanner that allows you to log in immediately. It works as advertised. Now, in terms of ports, the 16-inch machine brings back the exact same ports as the 2021 machine, and that's great news because that was the machine that Apple brought back all the useful ports that it has stripped away. So on the right side, you have an HDMI port, a USB-C Thunderbolt, and an SD card slot. Having an SD card slot is so important for a YouTuber like me because I film with my camera. Afterwards, I just take out my memory card, stick it in, and I can move files immediately. I don't have to deal with a dongle. On the left side, you have a 3.5mm headphone jack, 2 more USB-C ports. These are also Thunderbolt 4, and a MagSafe charger. The MagSafe charger is a magnetic pogo pin charger that you can just kind of plug in. And if somebody, like a dog or a kid accidentally trips on the cable, it won't yank your laptop off the table. So it's quite useful to have. The battery here is huge. It is a 96 watt hour battery, and the machine comes with a 140 watt charger. I can top up this machine from 0 to 100 in about 70 minutes. But like I said, I very rarely had to charge this machine because of how good battery life has been. Now this unit has 96 gigs of RAM, which is, to be honest, too much for me because I couldn't even get the fan to turn on the entire time. I think this configuration with the M2 Max, 96 gigs of RAM, it's ideal for professional videographers or 3D artists. For a videographer who might need to output to 2 8K displays, you can do this here, no problem. So overall, the M2 Max MacBook Pro is an absolute beast of a machine, and for content creators, it is almost like a must-have, I want to say. Now, I'm not saying a must-have meaning you have to get the M2 Max with 96 gigs of RAM. You can drop down to the M2 Pro chip with 32 gigs of RAM, and it would still be good enough for probably 90% of YouTubers out there. If you're someone who don't even do videos, you just use your laptop to write articles, write emails, you don't need an M2 Pro or Max chip at all. You can just stick with the M2 MacBook Air and it will absolutely be fine. So Apple Silicon at this point, it's so powerful, it's just lapping the competition. And I know some Windows fans are gonna come back and argue, no, you can still do more things on a Windows machine like gaming, and you can spec out your tower a little bit. But to be honest, for most people, in terms of portable work machines, a MacBook Pro with Apple Silicon is just better than anything else out there. And again, I am not an Apple fanboy. I would not say this if I didn't genuinely believe in it. So yeah, that's about it for this long-term review of the M2 Max MacBook Pro. An absolute beast of a machine. And the Apple product that makes me sound like an Apple fanboy, even though I'm not. So anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.